What if I told you the biggest financial mistake most people make isn't investing in the wrong stock? It isn't buying the wrong house. It isn't even earning too little money. It's spending their lives trying to look rich instead of becoming rich. Every day, millions of people wake up and put on a performance. A luxury car they can barely afford, designer clothes purchased with borrowed money, the newest phone, even though the old one works perfectly, a vacation paid for with a credit card they'll still be paying off long after the memories fade. From the outside, everything looks perfect. The smiles are bright. The pictures are flawless. The lifestyle seems effortless. But behind closed doors, many of those same people are fighting battles no one sees. Sleepless nights, mounting debt, anxiety every time the phone rings, fear that one unexpected expense could bring everything crashing down. Because here's the painful truth. Looking wealthy and being wealthy are two completely different lives. One is built on appearances, the other is built on freedom. And today, we're going to uncover the hidden cost of confusing the two. Because by the end of this video, you may never look at money or success the same way again. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe if you're serious about building real wealth, not just the illusion of it. Every week, we break down the habits, mindsets, and financial decisions that separate people who stay trapped from those who quietly achieve financial freedom. Now, let me tell you a story that happens every single day, but almost no one talks about. Oliver was 32 years old. On paper, he looked successful. He worked for a respected technology company. His salary was over $95,000 a year. He lived in a modern apartment downtown. He drove a sleek black luxury SUV. His wrist carried a watch worth nearly $8,000. Every Friday night, his Instagram filled with photos from upscale restaurants where dinner cost more than some families spent on groceries in a week. To everyone around him, Oliver had made it. His college friends admired him. His coworkers envied him. Even his younger brother once said, "I hope one day I can live like you." Oliver smiled. He thanked them. He accepted every compliment. But there was one thing nobody ever saw. Every Sunday evening, after posting another carefully edited photo, Oliver would sit alone in complete silence. His smile disappeared. He opened his banking app. His checking account balance usually read less than $200, sometimes less than $50. Then came the notifications. Credit card payment due, car loan reminder, personal loan installment, rent due in 4 days. One by one, his confidence faded. His breathing became heavier. Because he knew something nobody else knew. He wasn't living a wealthy life. He was financing an expensive illusion. The weight of the mask. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to confuse someone's highlight reel with their real life? Social media has become a stage. Everyone wants to look like they're winning. People rarely post the sleepless nights. They don't post the collection notices. They don't upload videos of themselves wondering how they'll pay next month's bills. They post the vacation, not the debt that paid for it. They post the designer shoes, not the anxiety behind buying them. They post success, not the sacrifice. Oliver wasn't lying, but he wasn't telling the whole truth either. Because every picture had a price. Every luxury came with another monthly payment. Every compliment pushed him to spend even more. Without realizing it, he had become addicted, not to luxury, but to approval, the invisible competition. The strange thing about chasing status is that the finish line never stays still. When Oliver bought his first luxury car, he felt accomplished. For about 3 months. Then one of his coworkers arrived with a newer model. Suddenly, his car didn't feel special anymore. When he purchased his expensive watch, he couldn't stop looking at it. Until another friend showed up, wearing one that cost twice as much. The excitement disappeared. Not because the watch had changed, but because comparison had stolen his joy. And that's exactly how the cycle begins. You buy something, thinking it will finally make you feel successful. It does. For a little while. Then someone else raises the standard, and you're back where you started. Only now, you're carrying more debt. The cost nobody calculates. People often ask, how much does that car cost? How much was that vacation? How expensive is that watch? But almost nobody asks the most important question. What did it cost emotionally? What did it cost in stress? In sleepless nights? In missed opportunities? In delayed dreams? What investment was never made because the money went toward impressing strangers? What business was never started? What emergency fund was never built? What future was quietly sacrificed to maintain an image? Because every dollar has two possible destinations. It can either buy temporary attention or permanent freedom, but it can never do both at the same time. A question that changes everything. So before we continue, I want you to pause for just a moment. Think about the last expensive thing you bought. Now ask yourself, if nobody else could ever see it, would you still have bought it? That single question has the power to reveal whether you're building your future or simply performing for an audience. And in the next part, we'll uncover why millions of intelligent, hardworking people fall into this trap, even when they know better. Because the hidden cost of looking rich isn't just financial, it's psychological. And once you understand how the game is designed, you'll finally know how to stop playing it. Oliver wasn't careless. He wasn't irresponsible. He wasn't lazy. In fact, he was exactly the kind of person society tells us should be successful. He had a good education, a stable career, a respectable income. Yet somehow, he was trapped. And here's the shocking part. Oliver wasn't alone. Millions of hardworking people wake up every morning, earn a decent paycheck, and still feel like they're falling behind. Not because they don't make enough money, but because they're trapped in a game they don't even realize they're playing. It's a game with no finish line. A race where the prize keeps moving farther away. And the rules? They're written by advertisers, influencers, celebrities, and social media algorithms that profit every time you believe you're not enough. Without saying a single word, they whisper the same message every day. You need more. A newer car, a bigger house, a better wardrobe, a more luxurious vacation, a lifestyle that tells the world, I've made it. But here's the truth no advertisement will ever tell you. The more you chase appearances, the further financial freedom slips away. Oliver didn't buy expensive things because he loved them. He bought them because he loved the feeling they gave him. The compliments, the admiration, the attention. When someone said, wow, your car is amazing, he felt successful, for a moment. When his vacation photos collected thousands of likes, he felt important, for a moment. When strangers assumed he was wealthy, he felt accomplished, for a moment. But moments don't last. Validation fades. Likes stop coming. Compliments become normal. Then something strange happens. You start chasing the next purchase, to recreate the same feeling. It becomes less about the object, and more about feeding an emotional hunger. A hunger that can never truly be satisfied. Because no purchase can permanently fix insecurity. No designer label can create lasting confidence. No luxury car can replace self-worth. And no amount of applause can silence the fear of not being enough. There was a time when people compared themselves only to their neighbors. Today, we compare ourselves to the entire world. Within 5 minutes of opening your phone, you can see a millionaire in Dubai, a celebrity in Los Angeles, an entrepreneur in New York, a luxury influencer in Monaco, and a 20-year-old claiming they've already retired. Your brain doesn't know that you're watching everyone's highlight reel. It simply asks, why isn't my life like that? Comparison is dangerous because it changes your definition of normal. Suddenly, the reliable car you've driven for years feels embarrassing. The apartment you once loved feels too small. The clothes you proudly wore last month suddenly seem outdated. Nothing about your life changed. Only your perspective did. Comparison is a thief. It steals gratitude. It steals peace. And eventually, it steals your money. Because once you're convinced you're behind, you'll spend almost anything trying to catch up. One afternoon, Oliver attended a college reunion. Everyone looked successful. Luxury watches, tailored suits, new cars parked outside the venue. People laughed as they talked about promotions, investments, and dream vacations. Oliver smiled, but inside, he felt small. He had no idea that several of those same people were struggling too. One had 3 maxed-out credit cards. Another hadn't saved a single dollar for retirement. Someone else had refinanced their house just to maintain their lifestyle. But no one talked about that, because everyone was protecting the same illusion. They weren't competing against each other. They were competing against expectations. And expectations are expensive. Very expensive. A year after Oliver's college reunion, something incredible happened. He got promoted. After years of late nights, endless meetings, and sacrificing weekends, his hard work finally paid off. His salary jumped from $95,000 to $125,000 a year. For the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. He opened his banking app and smiled. This changes everything, he whispered to himself. He imagined finally paying off his credit cards, building an emergency fund, starting to invest, sleeping peacefully at night. It felt like the beginning of a new chapter. But then, life had other plans. Or rather, his habits did. The very next week, Oliver started looking at apartments. His current apartment was perfectly fine. It was clean, safe, comfortable. But suddenly, it didn't feel good enough anymore. I make more money now, he thought. Successful people should live in nicer places. So he upgraded. His rent increased by nearly $900 a month. Then he traded in his luxury SUV for an even newer model. The monthly payment climbed even higher. Then came premium furniture, a luxury coffee machine, a designer wardrobe, a private fitness club, more expensive vacations, better restaurants, higher expectations. Within 6 months, his new salary had completely disappeared. Not because he earned too little, but because every extra dollar found a new place to go. The promotion had increased his income, but it hadn't increased his freedom. In fact, he felt even more trapped than before. There's a silent financial disease that affects millions of people. It's called lifestyle inflation. It happens so quietly, you barely notice it. Every time your income rises, your spending rises with it. You tell yourself, I've worked hard. I deserve this. It's just one upgrade. And maybe it is, at first. But then, one upgrade becomes another, and another, until your new lifestyle becomes your new normal. The expensive apartment no longer feels luxurious. It simply feels necessary. The luxury car no longer excites you. It's just your car. The designer clothes stop feeling special. They're just simply what you wear. Solely becomes ordinary, and the ordinary starts feeling inadequate. That's the trap. No matter how much more you earn, you never actually feel richer, because every raise is immediately consumed by a more expensive lifestyle. You're climbing the income ladder, while standing on a financial treadmill, running faster, but staying in exactly the same place. One Saturday morning, Oliver stepped outside with a cup of coffee. Across the street, his neighbor had just parked a brand new luxury electric car. People gathered around it, admiring it, taking pictures. Oliver looked at his own SUV, the one he had dreamed about owning just a year earlier. Suddenly, it didn't seem impressive anymore. He felt something he couldn't explain. Not happiness, not motivation, just discontent. The car hadn't changed overnight. His perspective had. Comparison had quietly stolen the joy he once felt. And this is exactly how consumer culture works. The moment you achieve something, you're shown something better. The moment you're satisfied, you're reminded of what you don't have. Because if people became content, entire industries would lose billions of dollars. Content people don't buy things they don't need. Insecure people do. Think about it. Every advertisement you see, every luxury influencer you follow, every perfectly edited social media post, has one hidden message. Your life could be better. Not because it actually could, but because dissatisfaction drives spending. Companies don't just sell products, they sell identities. A luxury watch isn't marketed as a device that tells time. It's sold as success. A sports car isn't marketed as transportation. It's sold as status. Designer clothing isn't just fabric. It's marketed as confidence. They're not selling objects. They're selling emotions, hope, recognition, belonging, importance. And every time we confuse buying an image with building a future, someone else profits from our insecurity. Several weeks later, Oliver met his former manager, Robert, for lunch. Robert had recently retired at 54. Oliver expected him to arrive in an exotic sports car. Instead, he pulled up in a 10-year-old sedan. His watch was simple. His clothes were ordinary. Nothing about him looked wealthy. Oliver couldn't hide his surprise. Finally, he asked, "Robert, if you've done so well in life, why don't you buy nicer things?" Robert smiled. A calm, peaceful smile. Then he said something Oliver would never forget. "Because I'd rather own my money than have my money own me." Oliver sat in silence. Robert continued. "Every dollar I didn't spend trying to impress strangers became a worker. Those workers invested, earned more workers, and over time, they bought me something far more valuable than a luxury car." Oliver leaned forward. "What was it?" Robert smiled again. "Freedom, not having to worry about bills. Not depending on the next paycheck, not losing sleep over debt. Freedom to spend time with family. Freedom to travel when he wanted. Freedom to retire early. Freedom to say no to work that no longer made him happy. That was the kind of wealth advertisements never showed, because you can't photograph peace of mind. You can't post financial security on Instagram, and yet, those are the things that matter most. That conversation changed something inside Oliver. For the first time, he realized wealth wasn't about looking successful. It was about living without fear. But there was still one question haunting him. Why had he spent so many years chasing an image that never made him happy? The answer wasn't financial. It was psychological. And we'll uncover the hidden mental forces that keep millions trapped in the endless pursuit of looking rich, and how breaking free begins with changing the way you think, not just the way you spend. That night, Oliver couldn't sleep. Not because of another bill, not because another payment was due, but because of a single sentence. I'd rather own my money than have my money own me. The words replayed over and over. He walked around his apartment. The expensive television, the luxury sofa, the designer lamp, and the smart appliances. For years, he had looked at these things with pride. Now, he looked at them differently. Each item reminded him of a monthly payment. Each luxury represented hours, days, sometimes weeks, of his life spent working. He suddenly realized something that made his heart sink. He hadn't bought freedom, he had bought obligations, and every paycheck was already promised to things that no longer brought him joy. Have you ever noticed something strange? Remember the excitement of getting your first smartphone? You couldn't stop looking at it. You showed everyone. You treated it like treasure. Fast forward a year, it became ordinary. Then another model was released. Suddenly, the phone that once thrilled you felt old. Nothing happened to the phone. Your mind simply adapted. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. It's the reason new possessions make us happy, but only for a short time. We quickly get used to them. Then we start searching for the next thing, the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next luxury, believing, this time it will finally make me feel complete. But it never does. Because the problem was never what we owned. The problem was what we expected ownership to do for us. Oliver began noticing advertisements everywhere. A billboard for a luxury watch. Success has a new face. A commercial for an expensive SUV. You deserve the extraordinary. A fashion brand declaring, wear confidence. He stopped for a moment. None of these advertisements talked about quality. None talked about durability. None talked about usefulness. Instead, they sold emotions, status, power, recognition, importance. The products weren't just objects anymore. They had become identities. And that's one of the most powerful marketing strategies ever created. People don't always buy what something is. They buy what they believe it says about them. A luxury car says, I've made it. A designer handbag says, I'm successful. An expensive watch says, I'm important. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If your confidence depends on what you own, then your confidence can be taken away the moment those things disappear. Real confidence doesn't come from possessions. It comes from knowing that even if everything vanished tomorrow, you would still know your worth. There is one word, just 2 letters, that has emptied more bank accounts than almost anything else. If. If I buy this, people will respect me. If I wear this, people will admire me. If I drive this, people will think I've succeeded. Life becomes a series of conditions. Waiting for happiness, waiting for approval, waiting for validation. But happiness built on conditions is fragile. Because there's always another condition waiting. Another purchase. Another goal. Another comparison. Oliver realized he'd spent years chasing an imaginary finish line. And every time he got close, it moved farther away. A few months later, Oliver traveled to visit his grandmother. She lived in a quiet countryside town. Her house was small. Her furniture was old. Her television was nearly 15 years old. She didn't own designer clothes. She had never traveled first class. She had no social media. Yet, Oliver had never met anyone who seemed so peaceful. Every morning, she woke up smiling. She grew vegetables in her garden. She baked bread for her neighbors. She laughed easily. She slept peacefully. As they sat on the porch one evening, Oliver asked, Grandma, weren't there things you wanted but couldn't afford? She smiled. Oh, of course. Then she looked at the sunset before answering. But I learned something when I was young. Oliver waited. She gently squeezed his hand. The things you own should serve your life. They should never become the reason you stop living it. Silence filled the porch. The birds sang in the distance. Oliver realized his grandmother had almost nothing society considered luxurious. Yet she possessed something money couldn't buy, contentment. And for the first time, He understood that contentment isn't the reward for getting everything you want. It's the ability to appreciate what you already have while wisely building toward a better future. Driving home that weekend, Oliver didn't feel inspired to buy something new. He felt inspired to let go. He began asking himself difficult questions. How many purchases had he made just to impress people? How many hours had he traded for things he barely noticed anymore? How much of his future had he sacrificed for temporary applause? Those questions hurt, but they also awakened him. Because sometimes, growth begins the moment we're honest about the lies we've been telling ourselves. And Oliver was finally ready to stop pretending. The next chapter of Oliver's life wouldn't begin with earning more money. It would begin with making different decisions. Small decisions, quiet decisions, the kind no one applauds. Next, you'll discover the habits of people who build real wealth, not by looking rich, but by thinking differently. You'll learn why the truly wealthy often live below their means, invest with patience, and value freedom over status. Because once you change your mindset, your money begins to change too. The hardest part of changing your life isn't making more money. It's admitting that the life you've been living isn't leading where you want to go. For Oliver, that realization was painful. He had spent nearly 10 years climbing a ladder, only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't free. He had possessions, but they possessed him. Every luxury came with a payment. Every payment came with pressure. Every month felt like starting over. One Monday morning, before leaving for work, Oliver made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not the kind people post online. A quiet decision, the kind that changes a life from the inside out. He looked around his apartment and whispered, "I'm done trying to impress people who aren't paying my bills." That sentence marked the beginning of a completely different journey. A week later, Oliver sold the luxury SUV. His friends couldn't believe it. "Why would you downgrade? Did something happen? Are you having money problems?" He smiled. "No, I'm solving them." Some people laughed. Others looked confused. A few secretly judged him. But Oliver had learned something important. When you stop performing for the crowd often becomes uncomfortable, because your choices force them to question their own. He replaced the expensive SUV with a reliable used car. It wasn't flashy. It didn't turn heads. It didn't earn compliments. But every month, it gave him something far more valuable: breathing room. The extra money that once disappeared into a car payment now had a new assignment: building freedom. For the first time in years, Oliver wasn't just paying bills. He was creating options. Months passed. Oliver began reading books about wealth, listening to financial podcasts during his commute, studying the habits of people who quietly became financially independent. Something surprised him. Many of the truly wealthy people he studied didn't look rich at all. They drove practical cars. They avoided unnecessary debt. They rarely chased trends. They invested consistently. They lived below their means, even after their income grew. At first, this seemed backward. If they had money, why didn't they spend it? Then Oliver realized something. Rich people don't become wealthy because they spend like they're rich. They become wealthy because they spend like they still have something to prove, to their future, not to strangers. Every dollar they didn't waste became an employee. That employee earned more money, which hired even more employees. Eventually, those employees worked harder than they ever had to. That's the real power of wealth. Your money begins working, so you don't always have to. Oliver opened his first investment account. At first, he could only afford to invest a small amount each month. It didn't seem impressive. Sometimes he wondered, can this tiny amount really make a difference? Then he remembered something Robert had told him. Wealth is rarely built in dramatic moments. It's built through ordinary decisions repeated for years. So Oliver stayed consistent. He invested every month, even when it felt insignificant, even when friends spent that same money on luxury weekends, even when social media tempted him to buy things he didn't need. Slowly, his emergency fund grew. His debt became smaller. His investments became larger. Something incredible happened. For the first time, watching his savings increase brought him more excitement than buying something new ever had. Because purchases lose value, progress builds confidence. One Friday evening, Oliver met his old friends for dinner. The conversation sounded familiar. Someone had upgraded to a bigger house. Another had financed a luxury sports car. Another proudly showed off a designer watch that cost nearly 6 months of mortgage payments. Then one of them turned to Oliver. "So, when are you upgrading?" Oliver smiled. "A year earlier, That question would have made him feel insecure. Now, it made him feel grateful. He calmly replied, "I'm upgrading every month." His friends looked confused. "I just don't upgrade the things people can see." Silence. Then he continued, "I'm upgrading my investments, my emergency fund, my peace of mind, my future, my freedom." No one spoke for several seconds. Because deep down, everyone understood. Real wealth isn't always visible. Sometimes, it exists quietly inside a bank account, an investment portfolio, a paid-off debt, a peaceful night's sleep. The richest person in the room may not be wearing the most expensive watch. They may simply be the only one who owns tomorrow instead of owing it. Life has a strange way of teaching the same lesson, again and again. Many people spend the first half of their lives buying things to impress people. Then they spend the second half trying to recover financially. But a few people learn early. They realize that every financial decision is really a life decision. Every unnecessary expense delays freedom. Every wise investment brings it closer. Money isn't just about dollars. It's about choices. It's about time. It's about waking up one day and realizing you don't have to live in fear of the next unexpected bill. That is what real wealth looks like. Oliver's life had changed dramatically. Not because he became a millionaire overnight, but because he finally understood what money was meant to do. It wasn't meant to impress strangers. It was meant to create freedom. Lastly, we'll bring Oliver's journey to its emotional conclusion. You'll discover the greatest hidden cost of looking rich, the priceless reward of living below your means, and the one question that can transform every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Because the richest life isn't the one that gets the most attention, it's the one that gives you the most freedom. 5 years passed. 5 years of quiet decisions. 5 years of saying no when everyone else said yes. 5 years of choosing investments over impulse, savings over status, freedom over appearances. If you met Oliver today, you probably wouldn't recognize him. Not because he looked richer, but because he looked lighter. The constant worry had disappeared from his face. The anxiety that once followed him everywhere was gone. The late-night panic over unpaid bills had been replaced by peaceful sleep. He no longer checked his bank account with fear. He checked it with gratitude. His emergency fund was fully funded. His investments had grown year after year. His debts had disappeared. For the first time since becoming an adult, his paycheck belonged to him. Not to lenders, not to credit cards, not to endless monthly payments, to him. And that changed everything. One afternoon, Oliver received a phone call. His mother had fallen ill. She needed surgery. 5 years earlier, that phone call would have filled him with panic. He would have wondered, how am I going to pay for this? Should I borrow money? Can I increase my credit card limit? But this time, he quietly opened his savings account. The money was there. No loans, no debt, no begging, no fear. He paid the hospital. Then he drove to be with his mother. Sitting beside her hospital bed, she reached for his hand and smiled. "I'm sorry this has cost you so much." Oliver gently squeezed her hand. "It didn't cost me. It reminded me why I saved." At that moment, Oliver understood something profound. Saving money isn't about becoming the richest person in the room. It's about being ready when life asks something difficult of you. Because life will ask. It always does. The question is, will you be prepared? Let's return to the question we asked at the beginning of this journey. What is the hidden cost of looking rich? It's more than expensive cars, more than luxury watches, more than designer labels. The real cost is opportunity. Every unnecessary purchase costs you a chance to invest. Every payment on something you don't truly need delays your freedom. Every dollar spent chasing approval is a dollar that could have been building your future. Looking rich often steals something far more valuable than money. It steals time. Years spent paying off debt. Years spent trapped in jobs you don't love. Years spent saying, "I can't afford to leave." Years spent worrying instead of living. You don't notice it at first. Because debt is quiet. It doesn't arrive with alarms. It arrives one monthly payment at a time. One upgrade at a time. One impulse purchase at a time. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've spent years earning money without ever creating freedom. There are people driving luxury cars today who secretly fear losing their jobs. There are people living in million-dollar homes who can't sleep because of overwhelming debt. There are people wearing expensive clothes who have no emergency fund. And then, there are ordinary people, teachers, nurses, engineers, small business owners, retirees, people driving reliable used cars, living in modest homes, wearing simple clothes, quietly investing every month, quietly paying off debt, quietly building wealth. No applause, no headlines, no viral posts, just patience, discipline, consistency. These people may never look rich, but one day, they'll wake up with something money can't easily buy. Options: the option to retire early, the option to spend more time with family, the option to start a business, the option to help someone in need, the option to say no to a life they no longer want. That is what real wealth looks like. Years later, Oliver was invited back to his college for a career event. Students crowded the auditorium. Many of them asked the same question: what should we buy when we start making good money? Oliver smiled. Then he walked to the whiteboard. He wrote one sentence: don't buy things to impress people who won't pay your bills. The room became silent. Then he continued: the greatest investment you'll ever make is buying your future back. Every dollar you save, every investment you make, every debt you eliminate, is another piece of your life returned to you. He paused, looking across the room filled with hopeful young faces. Never confuse attention with success. Attention fades. Freedom lasts. Those words stayed with many of those students for years, because they weren't just financial advice, they were life advice. Before this video ends, I want to leave you with one challenge. The next time you're about to buy something expensive, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself one simple question. Am I buying this because it improves my life, or because I hope it improves someone else's opinion of me? That single question could save you thousands of dollars, years of stress, and countless regrets. Remember, the goal isn't to stop enjoying your money. The goal is to make sure your money is building your future, not just decorating your present. Because one day, no one will remember what phone you carried, what shoes you wore, what car you drove, but you'll remember whether you had peace, whether you had choices, whether you had freedom. In a world that constantly tells you to spend more, choosing to live below your means is an act of courage. In a culture that celebrates appearances, choosing financial freedom is a quiet revolution. Don't let the world convince you that wealth is measured by what people can see. The strongest financial foundation is often invisible. The biggest investment account doesn't need to be posted online. The greatest luxury is waking up every morning knowing that your life belongs to you. Not to debt, not to lenders, not to other people's expectations, but to you. So, build a life you don't need to exaggerate. Build a future that doesn't depend on applause. Build wealth that buys peace instead of attention. Because at the end of the day, looking rich impresses strangers. Being financially free changes your life. If this story changed the way you think about money, let me know in the comments. What was the biggest financial lesson you learned from this video? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you found value in today's message, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs this reminder. You never know. One conversation about money could change the direction of someone's entire future. Until next time, choose freedom over appearances. Choose purpose over pressure. And remember, the richest people aren't always the ones who look rich. They're the ones who sleep peacefully, live intentionally, and own their future. Thank you for watching.